Recording in progress.
That is a great answer. Wow. All right. So again, through the lens of Veterans Day, the military is a perfect example of organizational studies. In this article, they pointed out that their team is a mix of extroverts as well as introverts, vast age ranges, political, religious, and even family situations. Many companies have similar mixes in their workforce. What are the challenges to having this level of diversity in your organization?
Well, let me take a stab at that. So I spent 20 years in the service. Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans. First of all, let me say this. I think when, the first question you asked, you talked about the bottom line. If a company doesn't value diverse perspectives, it's proven by research that it makes less money than companies that do. So it's all about money. In terms of the military, you're talking about an organization where it's one team, one fight. They can't afford to not have an inclusive workforce that works together, or a bunch of folks will be getting shot in the back. We used to call it getting fragged, right? So I'm making a joke there, but seriously, I mean, you're depending on people to defend your life. I don't think it gets any more important than that, right? And so when I joined the service in 1982, unfortunately, it wasn't an inclusive place, and racism was alive and well. And throughout the years, I've watched the military finally realize they couldn't continue that way, and they were getting a ton of bad press from it, right? And who wants their son or daughter to join an organization that's non-inclusive? And so I think it's important for them to set the tone to ensure that people understand, hey, we're going to have an inclusive workforce, and the ideals of yesterday don't work anymore. But certainly important if you got a combat force going to war, right? I mean, everybody's in the foxhole together, so you got to work together. And from a business point of view, again, it's the bottom line, it's the dollar. I will give you an example of in Medtronic, what we're trying to do is to have that inclusive workforce. A very large percentage of doctors in the United States, give you an example, are Indian. And we are trying to get more Indian sales representatives. Why? Not only because it's the right thing to do, but it's also good for business, right? People gravitate towards people that understand them, that look like them, that have the same traditions and values. And so if you get a sales rep that's Indian, that meets an Indian doctor, I guarantee you they'll hit it off well. And what you're hoping is they'll buy a bunch of the products from you. And so this is not only about doing the right thing. Again, it's, let's be real. It's also about making sure that you maximize your profits.
This is Felicia. Can I just add a little bit to that second question?
Yes, ma'am.
And I also just kind of want to reach back just a little bit to the first question, just to talk about the importance of this whole diversity conversation, because it absolutely drives innovation. And having a group of people, everybody thinking the same way, that certainly doesn't advance you. And you absolutely have to be diverse because of the communities that we serve, in a lot of cases, are very diverse. And so as a company, FedEx, we've always been dedicated to diversity and inclusion. But even in the last couple of years, which is, I think, the focus of this conversation, we certainly have even placed more emphasis on equity as well, and making sure that everyone that comes to the table has an equal chance at success. equal chance at allowing their voices to be heard, and an equal chance to make an impact on the customers that we serve. Now, the question that you're talking about in terms of challenges with diversity, anytime you get 2 or 3 people in a room, you can almost guarantee that there will be something that they will not agree upon. And as you guys all know, we all approach life and we approach the way we look at things from our own personal lenses and experiences. And so because of that, that is bound to create challenges in terms of how we work together, in terms of how we relate to one another. And so from that perspective, I think the real challenge is when we are not willing to be curious and be open to looking at things from different perspectives in order to be able to embrace those things. So I think just the inability, unwillingness, and just even unawareness, not being aware that you're not open to other people's perspectives can certainly bring about challenges when you're talking about a diverse team. So I kind of wanted to address that challenge piece a little bit too, because we know in some environments, it can be very difficult for different people to work together.
Felicia,
absolutely. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to chime in because we do recognize that there can be a challenge with bringing in diverse backgrounds, and that's why it's necessary, definitely, to bring us all together. When I think about what we're doing at Bank of America, I mean, we have over 200,000 employees across the globe. So we have to be able to operate with D&I in mind, again, because it makes us stronger. And we understand that it's essential to our ability to take care of our clients and fulfill our purpose and drive growth and all of those things that when we talk about the bottom line earlier. But to that end, when we talk about what's the challenge, you know, what is also the activity or the action taken to address those challenges? At Bank of America, we have employee networks, or commonly known as Affinity Groups, that include the Black Professional Network, Hispanic Latino Network, LGBTQ+, intergenerational, because we understand that, you know, depending upon what decade you could have been born in or generation, that a lot of times you approach things differently. And all of these groups are here necessary for our employees to develop leadership skills, build strong ties with the community, broaden their view of diversity, address issues, but also institute allies, because the goal of our employee networks is not to create these inter-cliques, but also to broaden the horizon of others so that they understand the Black experience or understand the Latino experience or the LGBTQ+ experience. Because at the end of the day, we all know that we have to come together. It can be challenging when you have a different perspective, but if we don't sit down and really recognize what those differences are, lean into them, we can't continue to move forward. So again, we utilize our employee networks and a host of other resources to be able to combat what could be a challenge in diversity.
Ms. Chapman, you bring up a great point, and that leads us to our next question. I think your timing is perfect and your answer was outstanding. The next question is, are these challenges magnified by remote work and a greater dependence on digital communication? How is returning to the work impacting team cohesiveness? I'll open it up for discussion.
Well, first of all, I think that the pandemic opened people's eyes. You can absolutely, continue to work for the most part, unless you have a role like you're in R&D, where you need to be in the office. I will tell you that, working remote, and if you go to some type of hybrid system, which most companies are doing. Some people are working remotely, some people are in the office. It can create, a bias for those that are working in the office. Maybe the the management team is in the office, and if you're working in the office, you've got that proximity bias. And sometimes it can be difficult to get your point across, or to even get in on a conversation if you're working remotely and there's a meeting going on in an office somewhere. And so I think you see those types of issues happening now, where if somebody was marginalized or alienated before, it gets worse when they're remote and they're online. And so, although there are ways to address those challenges, I think that's something that management teams are realizing they're going to have to work on, and get some new management practices and get good at it if they're going to run global teams that are remote and hybrid, which seems to be where most companies are headed.
Dr. Christian, you wanted to chime in?
Sure. First off, I have some of my colleagues who I work with closely on this call. So first, shout out to them on this, because the team that I work with, they wanted to be in the office when our university still was saying that we want to have 25% of the workforce back. Our team argued that we will all come back because we enjoy each other's company. We have our differences. Trevia mentioned earlier that, about people being very different, the backgrounds and all that. Yeah, we all have our differences, but we enjoy each other's company, partly maybe because of those differences, or maybe in spite of those differences. Okay, so everybody wanted to be back. And so that's a fairly unusual case, but I hear what Devin was talking about with respect to, when you have a hybrid environment and there is a self-selection bias that goes on, if somebody is feeling marginalized to begin with, they are going to try and stay away. That kind of exasperates the situation. And therefore, that can be quite a challenge. Thankfully, we've not faced it. But I can well see that point about, if everybody enjoys each other's company and they all want to come back, best situation. But there are going to be bigger organizations or bigger groups where there might be those challenges that certainly exist. And so it has to be, again, Devin earlier talked about leveraging diversity for organizational bottom line and goals, right? So it has to be by design where you give people the option of working from home or coming in, but kind of nudge some people to ensure that they are going to be at work, because otherwise you see that is leadership, right? And with respect to having some people coming to work and some people staying at home, as a leader, you need to be there at the forefront. If you are expecting anybody from your team to show up to work, then you better be there. Some people can do remote work, but the custodial staff is not going to be able to clean places remotely. If they're going to be there, their boss has to be there. And the chain of command, if you are expecting your employees to be at work, or you insist that they are at work, you better be there.
Dr. Christian, you referenced leadership, so that brings us right into our next question. All right. The article
setting you up for every question, huh?
Everyone, you guys are giving such great answers. Wow, the depth of knowledge that you have is incredible. All right, so the article references overcoming the challenges of a diverse team with intentional leadership and teamwork. As a leader, what examples can you give that have worked in your specific organizations?
So I think if you guys don't mind, I'll take this one to start, and you guys, of course. I heard Trivia talk about the BRTs in terms of those specific affinity groups. We also have those here at FedEx. And I think that's really, really important because it gives people a place to belong. And it also provides that part of education where you have an opportunity to share different cultures, feedback, environments, and different things like that. So I think that's really great. We've also talked about intentional leadership, because in a lot of cases, we expect things to happen, but it doesn't just happen. Someone has to be intentional about leading the charge there. And so when we talk about, from a FedEx perspective, we actually are moving towards this workforce of the future where we are providing flexible work arrangements, because what we did learn through the pandemic is that people can be successful working from home. They can be productive and they can grow and they get a lot out of it. So we are moving to that environment. In my group particularly, we are doing what we call this hybrid approach. And we talked about coming together when it is intentional for us to meet together and to make things happen. But in terms of leading, when we have meetings in our department, because I have gone to Zoom calls and I've sat there and I've talked to a computer screen, which is pictures or what have you, and there's no one there. Because what I've also come to learn is that there is, just like you watch body language when you're sitting across from someone, there's also technology body language, if you'll allow me to coin that term, where when you see someone, you're engaging them in conversation, but you see them in the chat, or you see the facial expressions and you see them giggling and laughing. Those are things that we're having to learn how to navigate as we learn to interrelate with each other in this remote environment. And so for us, remote is a thing, that's here to stay. It's not going away for us. So we have to be very intentional. So when we started this remote thing, and most of my teams, they meet with customers quite a bit. I asked my team members to go on camera, make sure that you're on camera so that you can talk to the person, they can see you, and they can we don't lose so much in translation when you actually see a person on the screen. So that's one of the things that we do intentionally to try to build that connection and to make sure that people are connecting with one another. I during the day, I will ping various team members. I at the director level, they don't expect to see me. I don't want to say in their DMs, but in their team's messages, they don't necessarily expect to see me. But I'm very intentional about that because I want to just check to see how you're doing today. And so you have to really, really be intentional. When I have Zoom meetings, before we jump right into business, especially if I haven't seen the person, I'm intentional about asking them how they're doing. And the other thing is placing a focus on mental health. And because this is very different, for some people. I'm an introvert, but I know a lot of my team members are extroverts and they love that physical connection and what have you. So just checking in on people and making sure that they're okay. And just as we talked about, I hate to keep using the word, but it is intentional leadership to make sure that we can stay connected.
Absolutely. And Mr. Branch, if I can chime in too, that when we also think about how we're being intentional and really moving the needle with diverse teams, it runs across so many spectrums. And I think in particular at Bank of America, it was necessary for us to create key performance indicators. And we've entitled that our human capital report. We've built robust analytics, put processes in place at all levels of the company to drive this progress and accountability, where we are measuring at all levels of management what is the makeup of our team. We have 1,300 people in senior leadership roles who are part of our executive talent management process, who fuel the pipeline of our management team to ensure that at all levels, there is a diverse slate that is being presented when we fill positions. We hold more than 20,000 managers accountable for driving this progress and diversity within our teams. We also provide opportunities for managers to sponsor and support rising talents to continue to build our diverse workforce, because we've all had the conversations in times before of what is mentorship versus what sponsorship, and who is the person that is saying your name in spaces that you've yet to have the opportunity to enter into. So it's really a focus on building a strong, diverse talent pipeline that's focused on college recruitment, including, partnerships with urban colleges with a high level of diversity, HBCUs, HSIs, which is something that I've had the opportunity to learn more about throughout, my work with Bank of America and with our community colleges and how we are growing that pipeline of predominantly Black, Hispanic, and Latino, or just in nature, diverse student populations, so that we're building that bench and really being intentional around building the diverse workforce of the future, like was mentioned earlier about with FedEx, because that's what's important. We know that as we've moved through over the past decades, what we predominantly saw in a lot of leadership roles was historically white male, and how it has been necessary for white males to be allies over time so that we could continue to build diverse teams and move forth in the future and make sure that everyone has a voice at the table, which helps to strengthen and grow our firms. So through our human capital report, it gives us benchmarks and it allows us to, give a report card of ourselves in terms of how we're moving forth with this workforce data so that we're able to demonstrate and be intentional, since that's the word of this question, about the progress that we're making to build diverse teams.
Dr. Branch, if you don't mind, I'd like to just chime in because Trivia hit on something about, recruitment from specific schools or types of to build the diversity. So the flip side of that, as a university professor, and I was the director of the MBA programs for about 9 years prior to my current role. That time we made a conscious choice. Again, borrowing from what Felicia and Trivia were saying, intentional leadership, right? So it was by design, we decided first off that while we were growing as an MBA program, we did not like the qualitative aspect of the students we were serving because it was not reflective of the community that we were in, okay? And clearly, companies were very focused on trying to get a diverse workforce, and therefore we needed to have a diverse student population in return, okay? So one of the things that I'm proud of, besides whatever growth was there as far as the MBA programs was concerned, was that we increased our minority student population by 12% during those 9 years. And one of the major things, I know Marja was there, she just maybe stepped out, but Marja was, again, key for that relationship we built up with the National Black MBA Association and hosting this every year and participating in other events, thereby making sure that we very clearly move towards a situation. We are never going to have maybe 61 or 62% of the population is African American. We're not going to have that in our classes, okay? But any progress we can make towards this makes all the sense in the world, especially because if you have very well-trained students and companies are looking for diversity, these people are going to get jobs easily. And I'm a first-generation graduate. So the way I look at it, if you have one student go through, be successful as an MBA student and get a job, you are not changing the trajectory of that one individual. You're changing the trajectory, economic trajectory of the entire family.
I want to pick back, and I think Trivia and both Felicia, they hit on something that was so important. I just want to circle back and make sure we clarify this, because I think it was very powerful. You talked a great deal about empowering communication, And so the next question, I think it's relevant. It says, how do you foster an environment that gives everyone a voice to speak confidently, regardless of their background or level of experience? I know you talked about that. I would like to hear from Mr. Brown, and I would like to hear Dr. Krishnan, just explain, how do we do that especially given this current digital age?
Well, I'll take a stab at it first. I think, yeah, that comes through leadership. And, you know, especially in a challenging environment like this. Yeah, I'll give you an example. You're having a meeting, it's a global meeting. You've got folks, you know, Medtronic is a US-based, Minneapolis-based company. So we'll have global meetings, and you know, I'm sitting in the office, and I will watch my boss very intentionally make sure that the person sitting in Australia has a voice. And it goes something like this. We'll be having dialogue and we'll be going all over the place, and he'll say, Han, what do you think about that? Right? Hopefully Han's not asleep. But you know, he does that to make sure that, you know, it's really hard to interject when you're remote and everybody else is in the office. They just kind of drown you out, and you gotta intentionally make sure that A, that their voice is heard, and B, they know that their perspective is important, right? And so something that simple, you're ensuring that that person's voice gets heard. And, you know, those are some of the small leadership techniques that we have to learn and utilize moving forward if we're gonna have hybrid teams. So a really small example, but a powerful one, because you disenfranchise people if you have an entire meeting, you never hear from them, right? Yeah. They're trying to get a word in, 4 or 5 people in the room are talking, nobody hears them, and they just forget about their question. And maybe for the rest of the meeting, they say nothing. You're wondering, well, why isn't Han saying anything? Well, he's been trying for 3 hours to get a voice in, and you know, nobody can hear him, so he just stopped. Right? And if the leader doesn't intentionally seek feedback or a perspective from the people that are remote to give them a voice, it won't happen. So just a small example.
Yeah. I think there are 2 types, right? One is if you have a smaller group, the easier option is go around the table at some point in time, either beginning or at the end. Get everybody to chime in. What are the challenges they faced this week? How are they handling it? Is there something that others can do to support them in whatever challenge that they're facing, right? And I know that we're going back here when we talk about intentional leadership, but that is exactly what, like Devin said, it's exactly what is required to get everybody to have a feeling that they have a voice and that they're being heard. Okay. In many cases, what I've observed over time is even if an employee has a problem, they don't necessarily, I mean, if you give them a solution, they'll be grateful. But even if you're not giving them a solution, the fact that they are being heard, okay, makes a significant difference to their mental outlook. Felicia talked about mental health in today's world. Just being listened to makes it very, very important that whoever is there is actually listening to you makes a significant difference. We have a group which is fairly diverse, and we have very great diversity in our opinions. But that does not stop us from talking. In fact, that encourages us to talk more. Okay, the Me Too movement happened, what was it, 4 years, 5 years ago? Okay. We talked about that in our group meetings because we thought it was important to understand, have we missed something or have we said something that might have some scars somewhere, which we've never addressed because we never thought about it. Okay. Those are not pretty topics, I can promise you, but they are important ones.
I want to say something as I listen to our panel discussion. Personally, I think I can go on all night listening to you guys. I think I've learned more this evening, I think in other panel discussions. So I just want to personally thank all of you for your answer. Out of respect for everybody's time, I know it's late. I know we all have families to get through. If you will allow me to, I would like to turn it back over to Daryl and let Daryl do the question and answer, and then we'll close. I just want to thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nishan.
Thank you, Dr. Branch, and all of our panelists. So if we have any open questions, wanted to give everybody an opportunity that are on that was listening and viewing to ask any questions for some of our guest panelists. So I'm monitoring the chats. I don't see anything, but please feel free to chat something up. Actually, I see one right now. So I will actually, Ebony, I'm sorry. Would you like to come off mute and please ask your question?
How's everyone? I know you can't see me, but I would like to just say I'm so glad I was able to be a part of this discussion tonight. And I know a few of you, especially Dr. Krishnan. He actually interviewed me for the MBA program at the University of Memphis. So, and I don't know if he remembers, but my essay to get into the program was on diversity and inclusion. That was one of my strengths in the financial industry that I got most of my work experience in. So, but I had a bit of a struggle, during pandemic times with diversity and inclusion. It became my strength became my weakness in, I guess, changing times or whatever. But I want to know, especially in the corporate sector, what are some standard practices that some of you all practice to make sure that everyone is equally respected, regardless of age, gender, sexuality, religion, economic background? The more I studied the MBA program, I found that it wasn't as, on a management level, it wasn't as easy as, as it was as an employee. You know what I mean? So what are some practices that you all have in place that we all know this is a part of the law. You have to respect everyone regardless of, diversity. But what are some things that you do, that you practice in your position to make sure that you're following those things, those guidelines?
I'm happy to chime in.
Go ahead, Trivia.
Oh, okay. I would say to help drive a culture of inclusion, we have developed and provide our employees access to a range of programs and resources that are focused on building, understanding, and driving progress in our workforce. This over 2020 and in the pandemic, and even before, going back to 2014, we've built on work that we have had underway for years and have broadened how we engage our teammates on the topics of race and inclusion. Part of that is to introduce what we called the let's get real conversation, which is also known as a courageous conversation, because now more than ever, we need to be comfortable with uncomfortable conversations, because that's how we grow. And that's how we deepen our understanding through, the self-education of people's differences. So we've introduced new guides and toolkits that are able to further drive those conversations and help our employees be advocates and leaders during this uncertain time. Because you mentioned pandemic in particular. We talked a lot about how, some folks kind of retreated behind the camera or didn't turn the cameras on and really felt like they had, gone into their own shell. And it was necessary as leaders to pull folks out by having these small group conversations. We know that as a result of what happened in 2020, that really heightened our awareness of what's been going on for years in terms of systemic racism, allowed this rise of concern or anger in a lot of places to happen. So it's necessary for us to have these programmatic discussions, and we combine virtual and in-person discussions to connect employees at all levels across the organization, to help nurture these types of discussions, to help people move forth from their biases, but also ask the questions that, we gave people those opportunities to, kind of lay it out on the line. Because how can we move forward if we continue to walk on eggshells or that make us diverse? So when you ask again, what are some of the things that we've done? Again, it's the toolkits that have been built out to encourage these courageous conversations, and also additional training for our leadership so that they are able to lead diverse teams, while also having to understand what their biases may be so that they're able to lead effectively. Great question.
Thank you.
What I would add to that is I think you got to make people comfortable being themselves at work. Bring your whole authentic self, whoever you are, instead of who you are with your family and friends and at home, and then you come to work and you do some code switching, right? I decided a few years back that I wasn't going to do that anymore, and I wanted to make not only myself but the folks that I engage with comfortable. Bring yourself to work, right? I used to take my earring out of my ear because I was afraid somebody was going to judge me. And, something powerful my boss did, I actually forgot. I hopped on a plane. I'm in a rush to go to a meeting, didn't take it out. I forgot. It was a Monday morning. And my boss said, "Is that an earring in your ear?" Female. And I said, "Yes." And I was like, I started taking it off. She said, no, don't take it off. She said, "I love it. It looks great." I haven't taken it off since because, she made me feel like, hey, be yourself, right? And that's what I try to do for my team. I want them to be themselves, and I encourage them to do that. It sounds simple, but it's pretty powerful. One thing that Medtronic did during 2020, George Floyd and everything else, we called them family sessions. And for the African Descent Network, we got people together and we just talked. And we had a facilitator, maybe a small group, 8, 10 of us. We got on there and some people cried, some people were angry. We just let it out. And then, when we got done, then we started talking about, okay, what can we do to move forward? I think people need an outlet sometimes, and they just want to be heard and not judged. And that's huge. And so sometimes when these things happen, people they don't want you to solve anything. Just listen. Listen to why I'm frustrated. Listen to why, I think I didn't get promoted because, they picked the Caucasian guy. Listen to, I got stopped in my neighborhood because I was driving a nice car. And people just want to be heard. And I think letting those emotions get out in a safe environment, super powerful. So, just a couple of techniques I think that I saw utilized over the last couple of years that were really effective. Great question.
Daryl is he's egging me on. He said, keep the conversation going. This is a great conversation. So I'm going to ask you guys want one more question, or do you want to call it a night? I'll leave it up to you.
Well, you got us here dressed on Veterans Day, so
All right.
We're ready at the party, man. Come on.
All right, I'm going to ask her. This is the last question. This is a great question. All right, and this is about one of my personal heroes. Okay, according to Veterans Magazine, the late General Colin Powell took a particular interest in developing young men and women, especially underprivileged minorities and immigrants, so they can feel their potential. Colin Powell states, he wanted those youths to go on to have successful careers, and the bigger the talent pool, the more prosperous the country he loves will be. So my last question to all of you, what are you personally doing to continue General Powell's legacy?
Oh, that's a great one. Since I lost my signal a minute ago, I didn't get a chance to chime in on that last question, and it sounded really good. So I'm just going to throw my hat in on this one. I'll just quickly tell you guys, you know, I have, my youngest son is about to be 25 years old next week. And when he was growing up in the house, there were two young men that he was growing up with that were underprivileged in you know, their circumstances. And so those young men were in our home most of the time, you know, eating, being fed, you know, not only a diet of good and healthy food, but also spiritual guidance and love and nurturing. And so those young men came up. And so that was where it really kind of started. But now that I'm an empty nester, I still wanted to feel valuable. And so one of the things that I did, I connected with a young lady, and she started a girls mentoring program here in Memphis, and it's called the Butterfly Effect. And it's young ladies that come from, you know, broken homes and difficult circumstances. And so I currently mentor 3 young ladies, and I spend time with them, you know, talking to them, coaching them, sharing experiences and advice with them. And then on a professional level, one of the other things that I do is I'm a mentor for a program at FedEx, actually, for high potential managers. So from my perspective, I think it's, you know, to whom much is given, much is required. And I think it is very important for us to give back and to really pour what we have into others. Even you might not think what you have is much, but you have no idea how you can impact the lives of other people just through just kindness and generosity. So those are a few areas where I personally am committed to trying to help others to reach their potential and to reach their destinies.
I'll jump in with what is happening at our end at the university. I talked to you about the growth in the African American student population in the MBA program. Right now in my role, it's about internationalization. And I think it's very critical to understand internationalization does not mean just bringing international students to University of Memphis campus. Given the economic status of a lot of our students, I mean, 40%, more than 40% of our students are Pell, recipients. So these are not people who are going to go hop on a plane and take off and learn by going abroad and experiencing other cultures. If you can't go to other parts of the world, then let's bring other parts of the world to you so that you at least get to experience that. And because there is a lot of growth to be had by what Colin Powell talked about was about immigrants and minorities. And this is the second part of it, which is about immigrants, bringing in international students. And that is, again, a very good pipeline for places like Medtronic, FedEx, and Bank of America, getting the brain power, training them well, and getting them ready for talent acquisition for these folks. And that's, we've moved the needle from about 3% of the total population was international students. Next year, we expect it to be close to 6%. So in a 2-year period, during a pandemic, we've managed to double the number of international students on campus. Many of them were online, as we all were till the beginning of fall, but now they are all walking around on campus.
This is my second career. I served with General Powell many years ago. Fine American. I will tell you that, you know, I think Felicia's got it right. Giving back is you know, for me, is what, you know, makes my engine run. And since I've been in Medtronic, started up 2 programs. One's called STEP, the other one's called ACE, where, you know, you take minorities and give them opportunities in healthcare. They have, you know, untraditional backgrounds. Maybe somebody that's selling cars at Hertz, you know, but they've got learning agility, you know, smart people. They would never get into healthcare industry, which is mostly Caucasian male. because they don't have the background, and they'll never get the background because nobody's ever going to hire them, right? So it's the old catch-22. So we look for folks like that. We hire them into the program. We spend about $300,000 a piece on them over a 3-year period. And we teach them everything from A to Z. You don't have to know anything about medical devices, and we teach you. And I personally am the executive sponsor for those programs. I take them to heart because we change people's lives. On average, one of our sales reps probably makes about between $200,000 and $250,000. You take somebody that's selling cars at Hertz, making $40,000, it's life changing. And I got, you can see here in my office, I got a bunch of notes I have piled up here in the corner from people that have graduated and they said, Devin, you changed my life. And it's super satisfying. And I know I'm giving back to the community. And like, Dr. Christian said, you're not just changing their life, it's you're making generational wealth for them and changing families. So super satisfying. And it's one of the reasons why I continue doing what I do. And in the spirit of General Powell, who gave back a ton to the community, I want to continue doing that work.
Well, I'll just chime in here to say, and I know we're coming to the end, so I'll speak very quickly, that a lot of what I do to give back and really embrace the words of Colin Powell is to understand a little bit about my origin story as a banker. I was literally going down a career path of something that had absolutely nothing to do with financial services. It's an experience that, quite frankly, shook me. I was working for a big box retailer, and I remember watching an elderly gentleman counting out coin to make a purchase. And at the time, I did not know that to be the words that we use today as economic disparity or poverty. I just knew as a young woman in my early 20s that there was something about that was broken. So throughout my career, I have been very intentional about aligning to programs, boards of directors, volunteer opportunities that are drawing or moving forth economic mobility opportunities for our community so that we can advance the needle in building wealth for our community. We know the statistics that the city of Memphis faces. We understand the issues that we have in identifying talent, but a lot of the work that I really do is what are we doing about it? So it's working in those spaces that activate the change, sitting down and strategically working with nonprofit organizations to prepare employees of the future by focusing in on soft skills and really helping to mentor and to grow and aligning folks to those job opportunities that Mr. Brown and Ms. Felicia talked about earlier, and working to make sure that they're ready for college, like Dr. Krishnan spoke of earlier. It's really all about building collaboration, and that is at the center of what I do, understanding how nonprofit, the public sector, the private sector, really all work together to help move an economy and move a people forward. So any of those things, that's where you'll always see me continuing the legacy of Colin Powell.
Thank you, Travia, for asking that last question. Thank you to all the panelists. Kamisha, if you could pull up the presentation so we can kind of give everyone our next event. I want to thank Dr. Nishan Branch for moderating and all of our panelists. This was a great topic and evening and a lot of great nuggets to share. And definitely the article was perfect for today, Veterans Day. So again, thank you all to our veterans for supporting us and working for our country as hard as you did. And again, I wanted to also a couple of quick things. If you're looking to get involved with the National Black MBA here in Memphis, We are always looking for volunteers specifically for marketing communication, as well as our membership and fundraising, and as well as our leaders of tomorrow. So if you have any questions, please email me. The email address is there. And the next slide. Our next meeting is going to be in January, the 13th, 2022. We are actually looking to start having some in-person meetings with social distancing and everything like that. So look forward to that Thursday. Again, we have our chapter meetings every second Thursday of the month. The next one will be January 13th, 2022. So with that, I would like to say good evening to everyone. Thank you for participating. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see our social media in case you have any questions on how to contact us. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Good night.